Hello and welcome. I'm so glad you're here with us today. We have a fantastic show planned. I really like this show because it is about one of my favorite type of stories where it's multiple people, at least two, if not more, who help each other grow over time to be less of a jerk, less jerks. Yes. And to help me with it today, you know him, I love him. It's my technical producer and brother, Tom.
Hello again.
Hello, it's like I just saw you.
Just moments ago.
Mm-hmm. I like your I am a writer aesthetic here that you have going on.
It's my day off of work, so yeah.
It's very much Tom as the dude.
I mean, it's not that far off.
Yeah. I'm enjoying it.
But I mean, like, who doesn't love these kind of movies? I mean, it's a buddy movie, is essentially what these always end up being. Yes, got my hair down. Chilling.
Eating ramen. Hello, Maggie. It's like I just saw you and regaled you with tales of things and listened to your tales. Maggie says, yay, the youngest doesn't have a Zoom class this afternoon, so I could stay for the whole show. Maggie says Tom looks very comfortable. Hello, Heather. How are you?
But yeah, it's like these are all the fun movies. Like, even when they're toxic, they're still fun.
Yes. Because they're helping each other grow while also adventures. That's what I like.
And you can do most genres and types of stories with this type of character development. If you can have them, go on an adventure across, the U.S. in a travel story, or across the city, or across time and space,
or solving a mystery together.
I mean, as sort of an odd case in point, a lot of what makes Doctor Who season to season is the companion. How well does the companion mix with the Doctor in the stories is how people tend to judge it.
Agreed.
So, I mean, and you can see just how much by, like, look at how different, what was it, Martha? Who was season 4 on the reboot?
Oh, of Doctor Who?
Yeah.
Martha was season 3. You're thinking of Donna's season 4.
Yeah, sorry. You see how much difference Martha and Donna are like, and the seasons in general, and a lot of it just has to do with the interactions between the companions. It was a very different story type because the companions were very different.
Sure.
And and so, like, there's another one of, you can just see it depends on the two characters, how well people enjoy it and which people enjoy which. But it also means you're doubling your chances that your viewership and your readership will find a character to relate to.
It is true.
I mean, Who Framed Roger Rabbit? Do you relate more to Roger or to Eddie? At different points in your life, you're going to relate to each of them differently.
It's true. Maggie says Heather's doing several panels and having a booth at
Necronomicon.
Thank you. I can't do words. Tampa soon. Yay.
That's really awesome.
Maggie says, I love this type of character development. Heather says, what about Into the Woods? That could be on this list. It definitely could be.
Because it is, in essence, I can't quite remember what the old saying was, but essentially it's, honing a knife against, another knife. You can sharpen and hone, essentially, two different main products at the same time against each other.
And you can have multiple characters that have different toxic traits. And that they are, where one is, has a positive or functional trait, can point out to the other character or another character how what they're doing is dysfunctional or toxic.
I mean,
or you could have where they both have the same toxic trait and they're like irritating each other because it's a little too close to home.
And like in Into the Woods or The Sandlot, you can have this sort of daisy chain of where one character is honed against another character, but that character is then honed against a third character. And so each of them grow, in a larger circle.
True. Heather was saying I was just watching a bit of it because it was mentioned in a writing group about stringing together a bunch of characters and plot lines. But I could see how the characters' interactions could relate to this subject. Maggie says, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles shows stress overload guy versus toxic positivity widower. Exactly.
And that was a movie that I think half of its popularity was because of the surprise of they're both toxic. It wasn't just one.
Well, I think that's like literally the entire premise of the play and the movie The Odd Couple and the TV show of The Odd Couple. Of here are two men who have toxic traits, but they're maybe slightly different, although kind of similar because both of them had their marriages fall apart. And they still are not sure why or what happened. Because they were definitely not tending to the garden that was their marriage.
Yeah. Looks like Heather will be quite busy.
We're both clicking things.
Yeah.
Heather says, I'll be on 3 panels and have 2 small spots in the art show. That's fantastic.
Like for me nowadays, that is the difference between, is it a real fan convention or is it just a over glorified come spend money on your fandom?
Yes.
Are there panels? Because panels are where we get to learn new things about the stuff we love. So I'm always like, okay, but what are the panels? If I don't see any real panels, I don't care.
Yeah, I don't go if they're not hosting real panels.
Like that's the real problem I have with the Comic-Con stuff, is where it's just meet and greets. There's no just panels where we've got this celebrity. Let's have them tell stories.
Right. Let's tell us behind the scenes stuff. Answer questions. I like those kind of panels. I also like it when creatives have panels together and really discuss their craft together. Again, whether we're talking about actors, we're talking about writers, we're talking about illustrators, or other visual art sculptors, whatever, I'm here for the panel. Even when fans, I love panels where it's panels where it's fans talk about like how they collect or how they get autographs or, talking about their adventures in their fandom, like what they've done. There's fans who've literally gotten jobs on the sets of their favorite shows or movies just because they wanted to be near, and they're like, and I got paid and it was great. So here's what happened. Tell us the stories. Maggie says Big Bang Theory is a study of toxic coping mechanisms and traits. And while I did not watch like the last, 5 years of Big Bang Theory, I know the first couple seasons that I did watch, they started out way more toxic, the characters did, and they were trying to help each other be more functional and also achieve their life goals. Which again, It's not that at the end of your story, your characters are perfect. They're not. That would not feel realistic. Nobody's perfect. But that they are better for the interaction. They're better for the relationships that they have formed along the way. And that they found good reasons to be more functional. And maybe they even like themselves a bit more. That would be great. I mean, you never know what you're going to get.
I mean,
So we really wanted to talk today about that. Of the 80s had a lot of films and stories of these sort of people on a quest or people on an adventure and becoming better for it by the end. But this had for a while, like especially I would say in the 2000s, it fell out of favor as a storytelling trope. However, I never stopped liking it. And I think it started becoming more popular again in the 2010s. And that's why I noticed, like, on our list of movies and things, of like, there's like the 80s movies and the 2010s movies and TV shows. Which is not to say there were not ones in the middle. There just weren't as many.
I say there were plenty, but they weren't as obvious. They weren't as easy to kind of plot out and write the beats to. They were trying to become more nuanced, and let's be honest, a lot of them fell flat. I mean, what was that awful movie from the late 2000s, The Other Guys, with Mark Wahlberg and Will Ferrell? Yes, that combination alone should tell you how rough this movie was.
Can we move on in this conversation? Is there some way to accelerate? Is there a fast forward button here?
Versus, like the last few years, there have been a lot of really good versions as we come back to this trope.
Count yourself lucky. Just don't look it up. Do not Google this, y'all. Nothing good can come of it. Just move on.
Nothing good. And also, this is sort of the episode that inspired this season because it's, Back to the Future. Marty and Doc.
So this was this whole season was inspired by, I was rewatching the Back to the Future trilogy. And it occurred to me earlier this summer I was watching. Or actually it was late spring. And I said to Tom, I have a new pitch for this movie series. Tom's like, okay, tell me. And I said, one young man's 130-year quest to overcome toxic masculinity with the help of his nerdy mad scientist friend and boss. Since we know that Marty actually worked for Doc in some sort of errand boy capacity in the original several rounds of the script. And in the made for the book that was based on the movie kind of thing, that it's more in there. So I said to Tom, that's my pitch, my new pitch for Back to the Future. It's 130 years it took for Marty to overcome his ideas of toxic masculinity. And, Doc along the way was also helped. And Tom said, do you want me to tell her, or do you want to? Tom.
What? Yeah.
Do you want me to tell her? Or do you want to tell the rest?
You can keep going.
Hey, we could do that. We could actually do an entire season about characters overcoming toxic gender roles. We could really re-examine a whole bunch of these movies and talk about when characters are overcoming toxic gender ideas, since it is rather a hot button issue right now. And I said, don't you dare me. Don't you dare me, because I'll do it. And here we are on a dare, where we are talking about, this is our favorite episode. This is kind of what we've been building to, was the Back to the Future episode of this, where we talk about how characters can help each other by being essentially like a sounding board for, hey, dude, this is not cool. And that you can have them all the same gender, or you can have mixed gender. That's not actually, you don't need like just a band of brothers, in order to overcome toxic masculinity. You can overcome at least some toxic masculine traits and some toxic feminine traits in a mixed gender group or in a single gender group. Or, I don't know, any other combination I haven't thought of. You could do it. It could be all gender fluid people going, gender's a weird performance, isn't it? And yet I still feel a need to puff my chest when I chop wood. What is that about? Like, you could have whatever. I don't know.
Sounds like it'll be a good convention for the panels Heather's going to be doing.
Yeah, one of my panels is how to write characters with disabilities and their caretakers. And another is how to create a YouTube channel. Haha. And the other one is called How to Upcycle Found Objects into Art. Very cool. Maggie says, is this I should not have Googled that waiting to have? Yeah, don't. That movie's not worth it. Heather also has an art demo using gel presses to create art. Very nice.
I mean, those are fun. But, and yeah, like, so with Back to the Future, we have the obvious toxic trait played throughout all three movies of Marty's incapability to turn down the insult of, you're afraid, you're chicken, you're yellow, take your favorite phrase.
Mm-hmm.
And Marty will go do it because this is his fatal flaw. And it's truly his fatal flaw we see in that second movie.
Mm-hmm.
Of he destroyed his life over a silly race with someone that of no consequence. But if you read between the lines a bit more of like what's being said, you realize Doc is a pretty toxic character. I mean, why don't you just think for a minute about a scientist who steals from terrorists who have gotten their hands on plutonium. Uranium is one thing. Plutonium is only for military uses.
Yes, Tom, please offer your little TED Talk. I've already gotten this TED Talk, and I would like Tom to share the TED Talk with everybody else. Since I myself am not up on the latest in nuclear weaponry.
Well, it's just uranium, you can get from a lot of sources, a lot of places, a lot of uses. But you can only make plutonium in a specific type of heavy water reactor, and it's only for military uses. There's no civilian uses for plutonium.
So you can't use plutonium, say, for a nuclear power plant?
Nope. It is not. It doesn't work well for it.
That's what uranium is used, right?
So he took this from a heavily well-organized, heavily funded, a group of people that I can only assume are backed by some governments. And he's like, I'm going to steal their stuff that's worth tens of millions of dollars for my time machine. I'm not worried. This alone shows you that Doc is insane and it has a lot of toxic problems. And then we go back in time, and what is Doc's question to Marty about his girlfriend that he may never see again? Is she pretty?
Not, do you love each other? Which is the positive thing to ask when Marty's like, Doc, I got a girlfriend in 1985. I got to get back there. Look what she wrote on the back of this flyer. She loves me. And Doc doesn't say, do you love each other? No. He doesn't ask, do you want to grow old with her?
He's not
No.
looking for any emotional investment, any
Sort of
this.
emotional safety or relationship attachment, emotional attachment to each other. No. Just, is she pretty? Like, if she were ugly, then, sorry, Marty, you have to grow up in 1955. And also, who thinks someone is ugly that they love? Who's like, no, my girlfriend is like one of those ugly, naked, hairless dogs? No, nobody. Maggie says Doc is so determined to see if he can that he doesn't seem to consider that he can change his entire fate by just not making the time machine and the letter from past Marty be damned.
And that is sort of where, at the end of the movie, that first one, we see Doc start to grow.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of his stoicism and isolation and essentially, let's be honest, proto-incel, he decides to bend a bit and check of, Marty obviously cares about me. Someone who cares about me really wanted to tell me something. Maybe I should find out what it is they wanted to tell me. And then Doc changes his life a little bit. Not much, as we see. It's going to take 2 more movies and, another 100 years of time travel.
Yes.
To get either of them, noticeably less toxic.
Also, like, look, I just need to point this out just because the only way Doc could get a woman was 1885. So few quality men that Doc looked great by comparison. Like, I'm just saying. But yeah, that Marty is working so hard to make sure Doc knows that this endeavor of stealing the plutonium is life-threatening to Doc. And Marty genuinely is emotionally attached to Doc. He does not want Doc to die or be maimed. So he's going to all this trouble despite Doc's constant, no, don't tell me, la, 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 la. But like over the years, Doc is like, well, maybe I should see what he cared so much about. As said, it's slow. Obviously, Doc is very hard-headed, but it does help that relationship. And in part, it is love does give people an incentive to reconsider their own toxic behaviors. Maggie says, poor Einstein the dog, he has no idea how flighty his human is. I mean, is that not most dogs? You get whatever human you get. You got to make the most of the human you got. But he had read Jules Verne. I mean, there were other men who could read. I'm just saying, it was a new genre of fiction. There were other men available who were capable of reading. How about poor Copernicus, too? He, like Copernicus, did not get the benefit of less toxic Doc. Copernicus, like, really unsung hero. What a good, sweet dog. There, I said it.
And yet we talk, this is a movie series that has lasted. People still talk about it. It was such a notable thing. And not just for its special effects, which, especially that first movie, kind of rough. They were the minimum necessary.
Plot holes you could drive a tank through.
Yes.
I fully accept this. This is a pure work of fiction. This is not meant to be a guide for science, okay?
And also, look, we all have some creativity moments where we just can't think of, a really creative name. And it's okay. They literally named the town Hill Valley just because they knew it wasn't anyone else taking it.
No, because it's a ridiculous name. How can you have a hill if you have a valley? How can you have a valley if you have a hill?
But so don't fault yourself with no matter how silly your names you
Does
come up
not
with.
matter. Just have a
It
good
doesn't.
time.
If it's a fun story, your audience doesn't care.
Mm-hmm. Just have a
If
good
there
time.
are plot holes that, entire oil tankers could go through, if it's a fun story, your audience doesn't care. It's only when they get bored and they're not sure if they want to finish it that they start poking holes and stuff. Or they love it so much they want to think about everything in this because they don't want to leave.
Yeah. That's what matters to your readers, is like if you are really enjoying writing in that world setting that you've created, that readers will enjoy it as well. Yes, Maggie's right. Maggie says, I remember how mad the gambling industry was when the next movie came out and legalized gambling had turned Hill Valley into a slum. I mean, you're not wrong.
Although it was more of a very specific reference to gambling.
It was a very specific reference to a real person who we may now call the Orange Cheeto.
Who was a literal slumlord, like his father, and turned areas around him into slums.
So it was more like directly pointing a finger at one real life human who took the second Back to the Future movie as inspiration of how to live his life.
But yeah, like we follow this movie, we follow these characters who, as Maggie pointed out, are not actually that likable. Marty is not that likable a character. Doc is not actually that likable a character if you stick around him. That's kind of why they're friends. Is no one else is their friend.
Mm-hmm.
But we see this growth, we see the story change. It's an exciting story. It has a lot of dumb jokes in it. I mean, who doesn't love the running gag of the manure? It shows you just how much this fun trope can be.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have some characters you're just like, I don't know what to do with them. People don't care about them. Well, then make a fun story with a second character that they can they can sort of combat and complement each other. And people will follow along because they want to see what happens both with the story and these two characters.
Mm-hmm.
They will, that is the entire premise of the buddy cop story. In every buddy story, where's your buddy? I mean, that is what made the movie. What is it? Disney Llamas.
Emperor's New Groove.
Yeah.
So here's what I actually thought was very interesting, both as an audience member. I mean, like, my whole family consumes lots of media, books, movies, TV, radio, you name it. We love a story. And how do you get these characters who are just having super zany, fun adventures? How do you get them to really see how pointlessly toxic their own interpretations of their gender are or can be? And the way they do it is two different ways in the Back to the Future trilogy. And I like that they didn't just stick to one for both characters. Like, they actually went with two. So we see this. One, we see with Marty. Marty does this thing where every time he's in a different time and place, time anyway, he goes by a different name than his own. And each time he chooses a name of a real person he considers the epitome of masculinity to him in that moment. So the first time he chooses Calvin Klein. All right, young people, I know that you do not understand, and that is totally okay that you don't understand the mid-'80s. But in the mid-'80s, Calvin Klein and Calvin Klein ads and Calvin Klein clothes and the whole thing, Calvin Klein was marketed to younger people as the epitome of sexiness. Oh, I mean, like they were these weird ads, but everybody was naked or nearly naked all the time. And it was like, oh, Calvin Klein. So Calvin Klein in the mid 80s was considered the epitome of sexy masculinity. And that's what Marty chooses the first time he goes back in time. And so, and then we see everybody, particularly his younger mother,
See you later, Heather.
bye-bye, is like, does think Marty is so sexy. Because he's so cool, y'all. He rides proto skateboards. And he stands up for, to protect women from sexual harassment and bullying. He's like, he's this idealized idea of what it is to be masculine and to be the good masculine guy, the good guy. And the only problem is he is now cock blocking his father, who frankly needed all the help he could get the first time round. And now, Marty's got to now be the wingman. So, and Marty finds out that maybe he's not as impressed with his father, which he's not really super surprised because his father never really changed. So his father's very much the same person in Marty's childhood. But now he's actually got to help his father get the girl. But the second time round, when Marty gets stuck in time in 1885, he does not choose Calvin Klein. He could have honestly just chose the name Calvin Klein again.
Hey,
hello. But he doesn't. Instead, he chooses what he thinks is an uber masculine man, Clint Eastwood. Such a man. Oh, look at him. And such an appropriate name for the Wild West, since Clint Eastwood at the time had really made his name shooting spaghetti westerns. And was always like the cool, calm, collected cowboy or cool, calm, collected bandit. And so he chooses the name Calvin Klein. However...
You mean Clint Eastwood?
Clint Eastwood. However, the problem is the people in 1885, number one, they've never heard of Clint Eastwood. What a surprise. And number two, they're reacting to Marty, who doesn't even know to wear boots in the desert because snakes and wild plants that are ornery.
Jumping cactuses.
He doesn't know to wear a hat. And, he's no good at the skills you need in a semi-lawless Western town. He doesn't have the skills necessary. So they're reacting to him versus he's like, but I'm Clint Eastwood. I'm a cool bandito. And so it really does help him see that while he may be thinking he's projecting this certain persona, this mask, other people are just reacting to the reality of, kid, you are not prepared for this and you're doing a crap job. And it really helps him see that what he is doing, how he is interacting, and how people treat him are not necessarily reflective of the truth. So when they call Clint Eastwood a yellow-bellied, good-for-nothing, scaredy cat, chicken liver, so on, all these terrible names, and he's like, Clint Eastwood is none of these things. Clint Eastwood is so cool. He's just the ultimate perfect man. It actually helps show him, Marty, these are just words. People will use any word. Words are free. They will use any word trying to shame you. And it is no way based in reality. They're just words. So when people dare you to do things, it's meaningless. And that is how Marty sees this pivot point about his own toxic views of masculinity, that real men never back down, versus what does it matter? Live to fight another day. Also, these people are imbeciles. Versus with Doc, what really helps Doc get over quite a bit of his toxic views of masculinity is he is inadvertently flung back into 1885, where he gets to be a blacksmith, the most quintessential manly man to Doc growing up in, I guess, the 20s or 30s. Probably the 20s is my guess, because in the 1920s, stories of the Wild West were really popular in the magazine industry. So you could get a lot of short story magazines that were just filled with Western stories. Spence says, Two Mules for Sister Sarah is the best Clint Eastwood movie. Fight me. You're not wrong. I mean,
it's like, as far as the Clint Eastwood collection goes.
Yeah, because Clint, kind of toxic. But yeah, Two Mules for Sister Sarah is pretty good. I'll say that. So for him, for Doc, the pivot is not him trying to pretend to be someone else. Doc actually likes who he is. He invented time travel. He likes this person. But for him to be the most uber male, to be the quintessential masculine man, is to be a blacksmith in the Wild West, shoeing horses and apparently making proto refrigeration units so he could have iced tea. Okay, you live your life, buddy. And that is what helps him drop a lot of this incel superficiality. And instead, it makes him more open to being vulnerable, so that then when he meets Clara, he is actually willing to be just truly himself and not try to be a persona. He's still doing that thing that Marty was doing, where he's trying to pretend to be someone he's not, somebody he thinks is uber masculine. But right before he meets Clara, he spends 8 months as a blacksmith, shoeing horses and making other equipment for people. And he's like, I am the epitome of masculinity. I'm out here making iron do my will. It's pretty cool. And when he meets her, he is finally ready to drop the act and just be himself and share the fact that he is an absolute fanboy for Jules Verne, and he loves science, and he's absolutely going to be a geek about it, and he's not going to apologize for loving science and loving the possibilities science brings to human life and the technology science can enable human life to have. I mean, i.e., look, the Wild West was great, but obviously Doc still needed iced tea, y'all. Okay? That's how this man lived in his life. And it's so wonderful that he knows enough about refrigeration and cooling units that he could actually make his own proto version. If only he could make something to filter the water better. Okay, but anyway, I have my own notes, but it's fine. It's fine. Everything's fine. As somebody who's had to drink Pascagoula water, like, it's like, please, could we have a better filtration unit? But anyway, Maggie says, the thing is, the toxicity of the character personas Marty idolized also show a young man who has no idea who he is at that coming of age moment. Yes, because Marty is 17 years old. And she says, Doc also has a few of the rifleman moments in the 1800s. I absolutely agree with you. 1,000%.
And so again, Doc finally, for once, felt safe just being himself. Instead of needing to put this facade on of what is a man to the current one, he could just be who he was. He wasn't worried.
Let's be perfectly honest. If you want to form lasting relationships with people, you're going to have to be emotionally vulnerable. You have to share some of your own true self with someone else, whether we're talking about a romantic relationship or a friendship or even something more deep like a marriage. The bottom line is, any kind of relationship, a lasting relationship, you're going to have to share yourself, share your truths, share who you really are. And granted, you don't just do it all at once. You go step by step, make sure that other person is also still on board. But you do have to get to that. And we don't see Doc being as willing to share of himself, even with Marty, until these adventures start, because a lot of these things Marty is having to learn about Doc on the fly in this very accidental time travel hijinks. But Doc doesn't really share himself with Marty. And it is only in these moments of stress and duress that Doc finally shares a moment, shares a little truth with Marty. So Marty does eventually learn things about Doc. But we see that his 8 months in the Wild West as a blacksmith really was a turning point for Doc, where he finally felt secure in himself enough to share who he really is and to just be comfortable in who he is instead of worrying about, am I being man enough? Am I being enough of a real man? He's not worried about that anymore. He's just concerned about getting Marty back to his own timeline and, living his life. And then, as happens, love finds you in the most unusual moments and places. And then philosophy has to determine, what are we going to do with this love? Maggie says, we never learn what makes Doc so standoffish, but he is from the generation of emotionally unavailable men of World War II veterans. Yes, because we do know, I can't remember where I read it, but Doc did fight in World War II.
Yeah, and there is
and that did affect
little
him.
hints in the background of the set from 55 that show his World War II.
And that he did, presumably it would appear that he may have some PTSD.
Yeah.
Or he saw some things that were, how did they used to put it in the 1950s movies? You see some things you can't ever leave or recover from or leave, something like that. Essentially, they're talking about PTSD. We see that Doc is definitely what we would now say is a broken character. But, spoiler, nobody makes it through this life unbroken.
And that there's also some indicators that that's part of why Doc was trying to find a time machine.
Try to fix time.
Was that he had, he'd grown up on Jules Verne. That's why, he even thought about it. But that there were some events in World War II he wanted to unmake.
And that was common in the 50s for people to feel that way for World War II veterans. Yes, it was called shell shock back then. And a lot of veterans had these feelings of this was an unnecessary and in war and of a lot of unnecessary death and destruction. Like he says, I really feel like he felt like he wasn't smart enough to save someone. I do wonder if he had a close friend in World War II that he could not save. Regret over losing the people we love that we grow the closest to, particularly in times where everything feels out of control. And what feels more out of control than a war? A world war. A war that touched every part of the planet, every corner. So Maggie says, I never saw Doc as wanting to be man enough, but rather from the geekdom perspective of, am I smart enough? And yes, that is why he was so determined to save Marty, like as if that Marty is sort of a replacement or a fill-in for somebody in Doc's past.
Which would have also put Marty at why Doc was relating to someone so much younger, because probably Marty was close to the age of the person he lost.
Mm-hmm.
Of, with PTSD, you don't necessarily age past that moment. You're always kind of we know
that trauma can arrest development of someone at any age, not just children. We know that trauma at any point in someone's life can arrest their natural development. So all of these things were common things that other counterparts to Doc were dealing with in the 50s all the way through the 80s.
And where, he's still relating emotionally with a teenager. Because he was probably emotionally stunted.
Mm-hmm. So that is what I like about Back to the Future trilogy. And you really need the whole trilogy, not like one or two of the standalone movies, but like as a trilogy, to show these two characters who, frankly, are difficult to like. And show how they grow, both through hijinks, but also helping each other to grow.
But also they show how you can write 3 different stories in sequence on the same theme, and each one grows on it.
Mm-hmm.
Because all 3 movies are repeating the same story over, but in a different way. But each time the characters grow a little bit more, and so they all hold up. And that's what a trilogy really is supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
Each story should still be a good story unto itself, but there's also a further overarching one that we get across all 3.
It is one of the things I like about the Back to the Future trilogy is each movie actually can stand relatively alone on its own. You don't have to have watched the other movies to appreciate the whatever movie you're watching. You can just jump in there and they catch you up. And it has its own issues and it's not repetitive if you do watch all 3 movies. Because they keep looking at the same problems through different angles, through different facets, because we really do see that. Think about it. It's like what? It's about a 2 weeks lifetime span for Marty. And we see Marty goes through an exceptional arc of it, during a lot of stress. Like, bravo to Marty for growing as a human being under some really extenuating circumstances. But bravo to him for over a 2.5 week time period. He has really grown as a person and has gained a lot of living and a lot of wisdom in a short time span.
I enjoy the poll.
Oh, there's a poll. Yay, Tom has a poll. Best buddy movie. Is it Back to the Future, Emperor's New Groove, Thor, Love and Thunder, or Who Framed Roger Rabbit? Oh, these are tough ones. So, Tom, what should we talk about in the next section?
Probably we need to talk about some of the shortcomings and some of the difficulties. I mean,
shortcomings in what way do you mean?
Like in Encanto, where everyone has toxicity. And that this is part of the hard selling point of it, is that everyone has real issues. Even Mirabelle has problems as a character. And where, we'll see that again, like we talked with Doc and Marty, they're not that likable. Let's talk about how, next hour we're going to talk about the difficulties with these characters. Of
what the characters have flaws. I mean,
on their own, these characters would be hard to follow a story through on.
The likability of the characters.
Yeah. Neither of the characters in Emperor's New Groove is that likable.
I don't know. The farmer's not so bad.
And in Thor: Love and Thunder, as we talk about a lot, Thor is a great ensemble character, but by his own, he is a rough character.
He just exudes arrogance and privilege, and
you just really want to smack him upside the head with Mjolnir.
A lot, yeah. He definitely wasn't spanked enough.
Yes. Let's look at what the other part of this trope of you do need to have these characters that are toxic. You can't just start with characters that are functional. Functional characters don't work in this buddy trope. I mean, Eddie and Roger are both rough characters. On their own, you would get aggravated with them very quickly in a story.
Yeah, Eddie is hell-bent on destroying his life.
Yes.
Yeah, I just...
And we're going to talk about some of the rougher parts, which is, what's the setup needed for this type of story? And that is, no, you actually need your characters to be toxic. They got to really have an obvious place to grow from. So we're going to talk where these characters start from.
Cool. Well, now seems like a lovely time to make sure you have something to drink, maybe a snacky snack. And we will see y'all in approximately 10 minutes.
Well, hello everyone. How are y'all doing? Glory, it sounds like it's still in the kitchen. She said she's getting back set up. She'll be with us in just a moment. You need a moment to catch your breath?
Beep, 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 beep. I was making myself another cup of coffee.
Ah, precious caffeine.
Whew. I was like, I could do it. No, I couldn't. Okay.
I mean,
How are you doing, Tom?
Maggie. If only we all could. You got Earl Grey iced tea and ice cream
Oh, that sounds yummy.
sandwich. I mean, that does sound delicious. You're right. So Carrie was reminding me that, Jessica Rabbit is much better portrayed in the movie than in the book.
Mm-hmm.
And is far more likable. And yeah, I was reminded that, essentially, the author, said as much, like, no, what they did in the movie was an improvement on my story, since all the characters in the story were bad people. They were all toxic. Every character, Jessica was toxic. There was no one who wasn't. It was, but he was trying to still write in that old hard-boiled detective story from the 30s of where you don't trust anyone because everyone could stab you in the back for some reason you don't even realize. Versus Disney was trying to make a movie with hope for a more general audience. And the American audience has to have a happy ending. As Europeans, bemoan of not the happy ending. Life doesn't have happy endings. That's the whole point. That's why we watch, stories.
Why do I want realism?
Also, life has a decent amount of happy endings. It's not all rough. That's why we aspire to be other people. Sometimes it does work out. Sometimes there is lucky coincidence, or that, just good timing. But yeah, God, I remember I got my hands on it just once of reading the Who Framed Roger Rabbit book, and it was this is not like the movie at all. I don't like anyone here. I don't know if I really want to finish this. Oh. Versus in the story, Eddie is at a rough place. Eddie is definitely has just got fear left in his life, which is why he's just drinking. He has nowhere to go. He has, he doesn't really have many friends left.
Well, no, because his brother was his best friend. And his brother was murdered, and it's still an unsolved murder.
Yeah. And so Eddie is kind of a shell of a person when we come in. Which is why Roger goes to him Roger goes to him because he knows Eddie, if nothing else, will still want the truth. And that's all Roger's hope is that the truth will come out, because Roger knows he didn't do it. So if he can just get Eddie to find the truth, he knows he will be fine, which not actually as true as Roger's hoping, but it's a good first half of the story. Because like any good story, it expands. We start with something simple to start the story rolling, And then as you get your audience more invested in the character, the story expands to include a lot more.
I mean, Roger's a good example of toxic positivity.
Yeah. Why worry? It all works out. Until Roger is now faced with it won't just work out. You have to make it work. And that is in general where we want to start these stories. It starts, on a dark and stormy night where you're
In the
not
city
sure.
that never sleeps.
Yes, where you're not sure if you're going to live to see the next sunrise. Is your characters always start with a little bit of desperation. That's why they're willing to go on this journey. Is for some reason they're desperate.
Ah, the stench of desperation.
Not good on a live person, great in a story.
Mm-hmm. Why are they desperate? Doc is desperate to fix what once went wrong. It's very Quantum Leap. Marty is desperate for this relationship because he does not have a father-son type relationship or a very good one with his own father. So he's desperate to have this validation from Doc. And to the point that Doc essentially gets him into a seriously dangerous situation with the terrorists, that Marty has to do whatever it takes to escape, to survive. Umbrella Academy. All right. What I like about Umbrella Academy is there's always an apocalypse. It's fantastic. It's so comforting to me.
As much as you talked about your mother being this way, here you are.
Well, it's because my parents raised me that way, that there was always an oncoming apocalypse. And now it's like, finally, when the apocalypse comes, you can breathe easy. Because the worst has already happened. The other shoe was dropped. Deep breath. With Who Framed Roger Rabbit, both Eddie and Roger have lost so much and are in so much danger. Maggie says Roger's trying so hard to be his actor character that he doesn't know who he is as a being, and per se from several characters from the Toons are struggling with who they are off camera. Truly, Jessica says, I'm not bad, I was just drawn that way. Like she's saying, I am more than what I was created for. Yes, it's the apocalypse doesn't worry me. It's the day after that worries me. Exactly. Isn't Umbrella Academy so good? Oh gosh. I made Tom watch all of season 3.
Although, and one thing I will say for the Umbrella Academy versus a lot of shows is each season for Umbrella Academy is really kind of independent. It's got a little bit of references to before, but overall it's self-contained.
You don't have to have watched other seasons to watch, say, the 3rd season of Umbrella Academy. You can just jump in right there, and they'll catch you up on what you need to know. So if you haven't watched season 1 and 2, and you're not sure, or maybe you tried to watch season 1, and you're like, I couldn't get into it, which I totally understand, jump into season 3. Particularly the first 2 episodes of season 3 are really just trying to catch you up. The season really starts going at episode 3. So frankly, if you really are like, I don't know if I want to devote my life to this, jump into season 3, episode 3 of Umbrella Academy and see what you think from there. Would you say that's a fair assessment, Tom?
I'm trying to remember what starts at the beginning of episode 3. How does that one start?
Sparrows isn't that when the sparrows kidnap?
Oh, yes, that's right. Yeah.
Number 1.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. That is pretty good jumping in point of.
Talk about some toxic characters, the Sparrow Academy.
of where it's supposed to be an improvement on them, but it somehow has gotten even worse.
Actually worse. Well, if you don't raise children with a mother figure of any kind, because there they are calling the automaton Grace instead of mom. Children need to feel safe and unconditionally loved in order for their little brains to grow correctly. And if they don't feel safe and unconditionally loved when they are in their formative years, they are going to just be the Sparrow Academy as late 20s, early 30s. That's it. That's what you're going to see.
Although, since you bring it up, Spence, is Gerard Way an only child? Because that fight scene's written by an only child.
Yes. Like Tom and I agreed as growing up in we had 3. There were 3 of us, which is the smallest of multi-children. I'm sorry, 2 might as well be only children. 3 though, now dynamics. I do love the dance sequence. I was like, Tom, you have to watch this. It is the wildest dance fight ever, and I love it. It's very Bollywood. Baby Herman is the most disturbing of the tunes to me, even more so than Judge Doom. Really, more than Judge Doom, because I really consider Judge Doom pretty sick. But I would say Judge Doom first, and then Baby Herman second.
I mean, Baby Herman definitely is kind of what we expect for someone with stunted emotional growth. Of someone who's, gotten their brain to develop somewhat, but they are still stuck as a child. Baby Herman is still mentally stuck as a kid, even after 40 years or whatever.
All right, just for the record, I didn't know I could miss Kenny Loggins' voice, but season 3, episode 1 of Umbrella Academy taught me that I kind of missed Kenny Loggins singing. No, but so
I feel like Diego's discovered something about himself.
I wish, but I think Diego forgot it as soon as all the other.
Yeah. I mean, that's sort of Diego's problem throughout all of it, is remembering the emotional changes.
He has the memory of a goldfish.
Yeah.
And the worst part is he thinks he's smart. I'm sorry, what? You just do your science thing. What is that? What is just do your science and then we kick butt and save the world? Diego, you, sir, are in a lot of denial about who you are and what you're capable of.
And again, I think that's part of why Glory likes the 3rd season so much, is everyone, including Diego, finally has to really grow.
Yes. They finally can no longer outpace their own shortcomings.
And temper tantrums are no longer a valid option. But I mean, yeah, you think after each season, oh, okay, they've grown. No, they haven't. That's what the beginning of each new season shows, is no, these people are still in such a rough state.
Well, look at the father who raised them. It's not shocking.
Yeah.
It's oh yeah, we could have foreseen that. And he says Judge Doom just wanted to erase the tunes in an attempt to erase who he really is as a chaotic personality. He is a person struggling with mental illness and highlights that the tunes need therapy.
I feel like what Maggie's getting at is that Who Framed Roger Rabbit is the proto Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Nah. I think I've also seen some other takes about Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Not specifically the tunes, that they are a replacement for segregation in that time period. And there's also a certain validity to that sort of viewing of the story.
Yeah. But I mean, in the
The
end, when
kids
it
are
shows,
second-class citizens.
yeah. I mean, what Who Framed Roger Rabbit and Marvel and stuff show is when you deal with that much constant violence, there's so much therapy you also need to do to handle it. You can't just expect someone to continue on like nothing went wrong. That they can still just trust the world. You've now seen that the world is not trustworthy. It's a lot harder. Yeah, you need therapy. You need to
Also,
talk.
the human brain is just not built to handle that much violence all the time. It's too much for the neurology.
I mean, I think it's in its part to me like one of the real problems we now see with the police force
Mm-hmm.
is it used to be a requirement that any officer who was in a violent altercation was off duty for a week and was required to go to at least 2 therapy sessions minimum
Mm-hmm.
to talk about what happened before they were allowed back on active duty.
Mm-hmm.
And they just threw that out the door in the late 90s. And yeah, we've now seen the situations we're at.
Yep.
Yeah, we do not handle violence well.
It's a lot for our brains to process. Even just on a physical level. There's a lot of chemicals that change in the brain anytime you just witness violence, let alone when it's in real life, versus if your brain is developed enough, and I mean like age-wise, like it's literally had decades to develop, you, for the most part, can to a small degree understand the difference between in real life and on a TV screen. But when you witness violence in real life, your brain just is going to have some time to process. There's metabolites that are released, there's chemicals that are released, because your brain cannot tell the difference between what you witness and what happened to you. Like there's not exactly a difference. So you need to give your brain some downtime for it to literally flush the used products, the chemicals out. And it doesn't happen in one day. It takes several days just for the physical flushing to happen. And that's if your brain is fully functioning and that you're not already dealing with, say, depression or anxiety or PTSD from other things. So it can be a real challenge. There have been studies found about those who witness homicides and how it takes 2 whole years for the human brain to fully recover, if it's able to recover at all. And that's with weekly therapy and support group meetings and doing all the things, plus not having any other violence in your life and having all your other basic needs met. Like you're not in a food insecurity, you're not in a housing insecurity situation. You Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you're having all your other needs being covered. And it still takes a minimum of 2 years to recover from witnessing a homicide. And that's a best case scenario. So you have any other stress, anything, and you're adding years and sometimes decades to that. And I was told that at my support group meeting about the homicide support group meeting. Because our support group therapist had just come from the homicide one, and we were like, "Oh, are you okay?" And she's like, "Actually, I have had a rough day. We had a group of 8 people added to the support group meeting. It was one family that all witnessed an in-house accidental homicide. And essentially the rest of the support group was trying to essentially tell this extended family what they needed to know about their recovery process. And the family was like, "What? No, I figured it would just take me 2 months to recover." And everyone's like, "No." And it was essentially kind of upsetting. There were lots of tears. And so our therapist needed to be comforted by my support group. And so and I mean, like, seriously, there was like, I think 11 people and our therapist at our support group meeting. And we just had to tell our therapist, "Hey, it's just one meeting. How about you just lay down on the couch here in support group and we'll have a light meeting where no one will bring up anything like too troubling. We'll all just have a catch-up meeting rather than so these are like some deep dark things that I'm struggling with." And she was like, "I don't know." We're like, "You are literally in no condition to mod us. So you just lay down." And they even somebody made her a cup of tea. And we just like played a catch-up meeting rather than having a deep dark discussions meeting. And it was quite nice, but she needed that recovery from all of that,
Although that does remind me, quick aside, just for anyone watching this, in case something you haven't heard before, if you are ever in that situation where you are just very distressed for whatever reason, not necessarily because of some, active danger, tea is the right option, specifically hot tea. You need something both warm and a bit sweet. It does actually help with that feeling of security and comfort. We really have tested this, and yeah, but you need a warm, slightly sweet drink to help calm those nerves. It really does help.
Yeah.
Don't go stoic. Don't just be like, "I can just get through this. I'm gonna power through." Don't
white knuckle it.
Never.
After she laid down for about 20 minutes, and for the last 10 minutes of our meeting, she just sat there clutching her little mug while tears ran down her face, and she nodded smiling at the thing. Like, we were literally just playing catch up meeting where most everybody in our support, in 11 people, we all knew each other. We'd all been going to the same support group for like a minimum of 2 years. At that point, I think I'd been going for 6 or 8. We all knew each other, and it was like, okay, we're just going to go around the room and you just update us on everything going on in your life lately. And like people then ask questions of like, "Oh, well, how did it go with, your kid or your daughter? Or did you ever get a new dorm assignment? I didn't hear what happened. How is your housing situation?" There's just sort of a catch-up meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And she's just like, because like we all essentially knew how to do this because the therapist had trained us. So then we all were like, we're going to just have a light meeting. And then what we actually did was we then went to the IHOP to have the deep dark meeting without our therapist. Because several people in my support group meeting were social workers and hospice nurses. They were trained for this. And then we had the deep dark meeting of, so tell me your deep dark secrets. How's the, anorexia going? How's the, fighting with your dead mother going? That sort of. And we had pancakes and, coffee, and had the deep dark meeting, which lasted 2.5 hours, without our therapist because she needed a day off, essentially.
I do like both these points of.
Maggie says grieving takes a long time. Grieving and trauma. Just pass the tissues by the truckload. Exactly. You've got to cry it out. Spence says I should make some hot cocoa mix then. I feel called out now. Yes, please make some hot cocoa, my sweetheart.
And on that list of things that people don't always in their heads qualify as trauma and grieving, Spence had surgery. No matter how elective it was,
Well, it was emergency. She didn't have a choice.
but yeah, but I mean, well, I just mean in general about surgery.
Okay.
It doesn't matter how elective it is.
Surgery. It's
Surgery
trauma.
is surgery. It's trauma.
It's
Your
like as if you
body.
got your butt kicked by a person. Only instead it was an entire medical team. But it's like you just got your butt handed to you. Here's your butt.
And it's going to take weeks to months to years for your brain to even handle the surgery that you're like, I know I was in good hands. I know it was all professionals doing what they were trained to do. I wasn't in any major danger. And still, it's going. You're going to need a while. And whenever you think about it, it may be time. Go get some hot cocoa. Go get some tea.
Absolutely. Or even a hot cup of coffee. Clutch Ursula to my heart. Get yourself a nice warm cup of tea and sit there holding your lovely warm mug because you are now safe. And you just need to feel that for a moment.
Also, it is fall, so it may also now be time for some hot apple cider.
Oh, yes.
Or hot spiced apple cider.
Amen. We need some of that. I need to put that on the grocery list. I love American
and I said, like, just like technically, she had a choice, but it was under a lot of duress. And that's something of like, it doesn't matter how much you tell yourself it was by choice. It's still in the end surgery. It's still children and, the afterwards of you had, 2 babies in the NICU. And you're having to travel. They're not home with you. You're not able to hold them constantly. So there's also that of just the worry.
The trauma of not having your babies with you where you can keep them safe.
The uncertainty of the future. Yeah. Everyone's going to be, it's not just, oh, I'm too weak to handle. It's like, no, anyone will be because the uncertainty and unknown is traumatic.
Anytime somebody has stents put in for their heart, they're also now put on antidepressants because you are guaranteed depression after you have heart surgery, y'all.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just heart surgery, it's any surgery. It's any and all surgeries. Even when Tom had knee surgery, he then it was just like they said, it's 6 months of depression. Everybody is guaranteed 6 months of depression, but I want you to think about that. So pretty much any surgery gets you depression for 6 months because of the trauma it created in your body, and that your neurology is now dealing with all of these nerves that are like, things happened and I didn't like it. It wasn't good touch. And so you get depression. But imagine for those who've been physically beat up, they would also therefore have depression for 6 months at minimum. All the love for Spence. We do love her. And I hate you had to go through that, sweetheart. Yes, hugs for Tater and Tot. That is the nicknames Maggie's pushing for the little baby potatoes. The baby potatoes. Is Tater and Tot.
Potatoes.
Little baby potatoes. Little fingerlings. They're little fingerlings.
But yeah, like that is one of the things in modern times humans really don't seem to appreciate is there's just a lot of trauma. Like, one of the things Glory showed me was this video a few months back of what was that? I think she was in Korea, and how Koreans handle postpartum.
I don't know if I showed you the Korean one, but I showed you the Chinese confinement.
Okay, you're right. It's Chinese one.
I did watch the Korean one too, though.
And how like there's even essentially special support wrapping for the body because it's not easy after pregnancy to get everything shift back to normal. And I was like, as someone who's been somewhat trained on, as a massage therapist on how muscles work, and to a lesser degree how the organs and bones work with the muscles. Nope, this is all really good. I like what they're doing here. Like, now this is all wise. Your body's been through trauma.
Yes,
It takes a while to recover.
it really does.
Growing something that big inside you
Let alone 2.
is amazing.
And frankly, stressful.
The part where the adult human continues on afterwards is amazing. Like, that is not an easy stressor to get through.
It's a lot of stress on the body, on the organs. It's a lot of moving organs around to make room for a baby.
It's, it's why I am one of those people who is a fan of humans are space orcs sci-fi.
Yes.
No, humans are surprisingly tough. Like, what we have to get through in our regular existence is amazing and not appreciated enough.
Yes.
Of a lot of animals, even on Earth, can't manage this.
They can't handle that level of stress, but humans do. Because believe me, growing a baby or 2 and birthing a baby or 2, however you got the babies out, is a very stressful experience for the body and the mind, and yet we recover. Spence says, I managed to fully white knuckle it through that Monday when a tech took my blood for an HIV test because I was storing breast milk at the hospital. Commented that I looked awesome considering. And then I stopped feeling awesome. Yeah. I'm so sorry, sweetie. You are an amazing, strong woman. Do not ignore that. We all think this. Because it is true.
Being strong does not mean we are immune from being human.
Yeah.
And the problems with it.
I had sepsis. And I nearly died. And Tom was genuinely scared I was going to die. And we've talked about it since. And if I had gone to the hospital earlier, they might have put me in an induced coma. And then we're pretty sure I would have died. So my whole sleeping for 6 weeks and not eating may have actually maybe saved my life. But nevertheless, I did eventually have to go because the infection wasn't getting better. And I had sepsis. I had, my immune system attacked every organ in my body, including my brain, including my heart, all of everything. And people kept commenting of like, they could not believe that I was 40 years old at the time. And I'm like, I did not lie to get in here. I did not lie about my age. I felt like I was dying. I was just determined not to. Because I didn't want to leave Tom alone in this world. And also, I have shit to do, y'all. I have a life to live. I am still waiting for this life to get good, and I refuse to die before that. Let the tears flow. Get that cortisol out of your system. You may feel better.
Say, I always feel like that's one of the parts not often acknowledged enough in movies, is especially in those big action movies, because it always ends with something climactic. And they're all at the end, once they survive it, they're all whooping and, making loud sounds of I survived. In reality, usually it's about 50-50 of half those people should be crying. They should just literally be breaking down crying because they've been holding it in and white knuckling it through this entire story. And they've now survived. They suddenly feel a lot safer comparatively than they have been. And your body's first response is going to be to cry. And that's fine. That's great. Let it happen. There's nothing wrong. Like that, because speaking of Who Framed Roger Rabbit, that is a bunch of the problem with Eddie Valance.
Mm-hmm.
Is Eddie...
He's not going through the process of grieving.
Eddie is just holding it in and has stopped himself for the last several years.
And he's drinking to distract himself, rather than actually process his feelings, his grief. So he's stunted. He's arrested development. He's arrested his grieving process. So it's like the trauma is still fresh. Oh,
who wants to live with
trauma? Like, why would you want to keep it fresh, to process it, and get it aired out? Maggie says the fact humans haven't gone extinct just from walking around and doing dumbassery thing is amazing. I agree. I absolutely agree. Yes, I do have books. Okay. Spence and Carrie and Megan have agreed to hold my hand while I process my book of poetry and publish it. So I'm also feeling well enough and strong enough to actually be processing my books. So it's moving again. Also, y'all, okay, like I'm gonna just tell you now, shooting an ounce of apple cider vinegar a day is surprisingly helpful to my gut. It's not pleasant going down, so I shoot it with, orange juice or coffee. But it is doing actually some really good things in my intestines and reducing gas. So I actually feel better. So I'm feeling stronger and more physically able to actually do the process of publishing my books. So, but please keep cheering me on. I need it. I need the validation. Okay. I need praise. Roger cried so well. Yes.
I mean, and that also does bring up again, one of the good ways to get your characters to grow from their starting point of being very toxic is to diversify what they each have toxicity about. Roger's is positivity versus Eddie's is stoicism. And so Eddie seeing Roger's capacity and that Eddie having to admit he doesn't actually at this point think anything less of Roger. Roger is Roger. Ugh. Him crying doesn't change anything. And that is how Eddie's friends see Eddie. Of him crying, him showing him being upset isn't going to change their opinions. As we see, Eddie also has to face that despite his attempts to space himself from everyone, his friends still care. His, ex-sister-in-law or sister-in-law, I'm not sure how you count that when they pass away that way.
No, that was his girlfriend.
Oh, was it his? Oh. Still cares, even despite, of like, she understands.
Also, look, here, I'm just going to say it. Eddie lost his brother, who was also his best friend. If anybody does not understand what a devastating experience that is, let alone to witness the murder and to himself be injured. I mean, it was a piano or it was a safe that fell on them both. Anybody who's not like, yeah, cry it out, buddy, then you just don't need toxic people like that. Those people just, I mean, who would not be supportive of, yeah, you need to grieve. You had an incredibly devastating loss in your life. And you cannot replace the death of a brother with anyone else. Like, that is someone you grew up with, and that is someone you found a best friend in your own home. And as somebody who found a best friend in my own home, you can't replace those people. Like, my mother died. It was a complicated relationship. There is no replacing my mother or my father. It is a hole that cannot be filled with other people, not even other people who are like mothers or other people who are father-like to me. There is no replacing those kind of familial relationships. It's just, so you just have to accept, versus like you lose a friend, it's sad, it's tragic, you will make other friends. It's a little different, but perhaps a friend that you made in childhood and that you've had your whole life, that's a bit different because you'll never be a child again. So you can't develop that relationship with someone else.
But I think also she appreciated that his response was to sort of bottle himself up instead of just lashing out on and taking it out on everyone else. He recognized it wasn't anyone around him's fault. So he wasn't, trying to, just be toxic around there as well. He just didn't know how to express himself. So that's where he separated. But yeah, the movie ends up showing Eddie as well that people still care, even if Eddie doesn't know how to handle them or anything. But yeah, there were people who weren't toxic in his life. And so
like that other detective, the other police detective.
Yeah.
And even a bunch of people in Toontown very fondly remembered him and cared about him. But also we're giving him that space because grief is wild, y'all. I'm going to tell you, as somebody who's experienced grief a couple times, grief is wild. It is a wild ride. It's like a roller coaster, and it's not like a predictable roller coaster. It is its own creature, and every person is a bit different in how they process their grief and what they have to do to process it and what they have to do to get through it. And you're going to inadvertently learn things about yourself. What the heck is this all about? But yeah, grief is wild. And all you can do is just try to make yourself available to somebody who's grieving so that when they need you, you're there for them. Spence says there was a rule to not cry in the NICU. I almost got in trouble for it once, but it was when I got to hold them both at the same time, so it's an exception. Oh my God.
And I can kind of understand because
My baby's together.
But I just mean like, not asking people not to cry in the NICU because
It starts.
Everyone's going to be
a train.
interpreting the reason differently, and we don't want to just set everyone off.
Yep.
Because everyone's just holding it together.
Everybody's just trying their best. So I think like for writing these kind of stories, really both figuring out your characters and then figuring out how to get or what to do to have your characters start the story at their lowest point. Now you have a choice. Is it like a V of the lowest point, or is it like a plateau? Like they hit their lowest point and then they're just going. That is your option. That's up to you as a writer, how you want to do that. But the lower you can get each character, the better it will feel as they progress forward and up into something more functional. They will feel better.
And you can just start them where they've never been functional. Because I was looking through the list of stuff to make sure I was like realizing the other one we haven't talked about this hour that probably should be is When Harry Met Sally, of these two prickly characters.
They're so thorny.
Like they've never been functional their entire existence.
They really haven't.
They've never been, healthy mentally. And the people they're around aren't necessarily really healthy either. That is why they're in the state. Is no one's been there to help them understand this better. And that's what they do for each other, is they each of theirs first chance at real growth of, actually improving and becoming a decent human being. And that's how we keep seeing them going through time as they sort of keep running into each other. And again, being honest with each other, something that is on a premium in their lives. They don't have a lot of honest people. But then again, if you were that prickly, I wouldn't really want to give them bad news either.
Yeah. These two characters will definitely not thank you for being honest with them. We know people like that in real life. And that is in part why they don't really have friends around them who are very frank with them. So it is the one thing in their lives they are lacking that each of them offers to the other. And that is where their attraction initially starts. It is a novel opportunity to have frank conversations with another person who you have no sexual or romantic interest or even friendship interest in. But there you are, stuck in that car for like 18 hours. Here you are. You can say all the things you've always thought, but maybe like decorum dictated you not talk about it. All the things. You can just say it. You'll never, necessarily see this person ever again.
But showing that you can just start with characters who were always toxic. It's not that they've dropped and, they once were these great people, but now they're at a rough point. You can have them where, no, they were never great. In another story, they might have been a villain. But here we're going to show them both grow. We're going to show them become better people we'd actually like to hang around with. And so that's the other thing I was reminded of. Like, there is a third one, and it's not thought of as much. But yeah, you can actually redeem even just always toxic, and have them essentially go against someone who's equally toxic. And it's a fun story to watch, because you're just like, who's gonna dent who as they keep clashing. And the answer is, surprisingly, they're both going to sharpen and hone.
Well, what I like about Harry and Sally is when they meet, they're actually meeting at a rather high in their life, just getting out of graduating college, moving to their first job in a new city. It's very exciting. They're going to go to New York City and start their lives. Okay? So they're actually at a high. And then each time they meet each other, they're either at a high or a low. But they're like, the next time they meet each other, they are again stuck in, this time, a plane for several hours. They cannot escape each other. So again, they're going to like just be honest.
I love both those comments.
I'd have joined the military. I'd have definitely been if I joined the military, I would have definitely been a villain.
I mean, it is dangerous, the situation you put yourself among others, of your environment and the people around you do influence you.
Mm-hmm. Maggie says Harry and Sally were both annoying people, but they had potential to go in any direction. And the story follows an enemies to friends, adjacent to lovers. Yes.
And that one is such a novel situation. Like, you just don't see that done well very often.
By the way, I would like to point out that it is very much a demi-romantic story.
Yes.
There are not that many demi-romantic stories, at least that I come across, that I enjoy, but that is like, it screams demi-romantic. As a demi-romantic person, I'm saying that.
Yeah, any story that has people meet and have no interest in each other and then develop feelings later is automatically demi.
Yep.
Because that's not how neurotypicals work. That's not how, the mainstream actually functions.
It's more, I have a penchant for making horrifying social experiments, and it's good they don't get carried out, says Fairy Law.
Don't we all, though?
Am I the only one? Yeah. Maggie says, but they could have gone all the way down the enemies to, was it friends? I don't know what the A is. To super enemies? Easily.
Friends adjacent to super enemies.
Oh, okay. Friends adjacent.
Yeah, like that's the fun of that story, is you really don't know from each meeting which direction it's going to go.
It is true. Not like him, Tom. He's scary.
Oh, it's nice to know how good a mask I put on. We've been kicked out of so many things once they saw us. All right, so it's probably about time to take a break.
Both characters have the potential to go to worst incarnation of their character type too. And we kind of see them get there in their second meeting. They are so annoying. The second time we see them on the airplane, oh God, these people.
Oh, the worst
They're
of yuppies.
so smug. Like, they're both of them just need to get slapped a bit. Ah! So they go down. And they keep going down personality-wise. They go down. And then both of them eventually have their relationships fall apart, because you can't be that toxic and have a wonderful, lasting, positive relationship. It's mutually exclusive. And so their relationships fall apart, and then they're devastated. And it is in that moment that they are open to change. And they run into each other again. And they're both in need of change. They kind of recognize that if things weren't working, and I'm really not entirely sure what about it wasn't working, but I probably had something to do with it. What did I have to do with it? And that is where they both actually can offer each other something, and that is frank honesty. Something missing from their life that none of their other friends are willing to give them. And so that is where the friendship then helps each other grow, because they are very honest with each other, but not necessarily in a brutal way.
All right, so shall we take a break?
Yes. Again, if you need a little cry, now would be a great time. Or if you would just prefer a snack, that too. How's your bladder doing? Let's all be kind to our bladders and kidneys, shall we? And we will, when we come back, what are we going to talk about, Tom?
All the others. The fun ways we get our characters to grow. I mean...
Like, I haven't even touched on Fruits Basket.
Yeah. Of, where there's a story, there's hope.
All right. We'll see y'all in approximately 10 minutes. Beepity beep. Fart fart fart.
Too much popcorn.
Do you see that reel or TikTok where the cat goes insane for popcorn?
I don't know if I've seen it recently, but I've
I
seen it.
posted it to the cat group, and it's like, just wanting like even one popcorn.
Pizza.
Like, what a cat? What? Okay, that can't be good for their gut.
I was surprised when I found out that dogs, it wasn't as much the popcorn as it was the oil in microwave popcorn that was so disruptive to their gut.
Well, it turns out microwave popcorn is filled with PFAS, forever chemicals. So,
I'm gonna have to teach you how to make the microwave popcorn,
so I know I'm gonna have to learn. I'm gonna
or
actually,
at least I'll just write out the
yeah, just write it
number.
out and put it in Telegram so I can read it when I'm like, all right, I'm gonna make this popcorn.
Yeah.
Alrighty, here we are.
Yeah, we ended up having a discussion. Yeah.
City Slickers and When Harry Met and Sleepless in Seattle are the unofficial sequels to When Harry Met Sally. Everyone is an asshole as a teenager. It is true. That's why overall I don't really like, including teen characters in, oh, they're toxic.
Yeah, like Marty wasn't necessarily toxic. Marty in Back to the Future was a teenager. And just showing this was what he'd grown up on. Not necessarily good, character models.
Also, look, I'm suspicious of any teenager people but they're teenagers. They're all kind of annoying.
I mean, teenagers is how I got Glory into listening to emo punk.
Yes, that is actually how he got me into it, is there's a song. And it's not Black Parade. So, and then CB stopped by in DC. Hello, hello. I see Sleepless as what if Harry and Sally didn't work out and Sally moved to Baltimore and became Annie. Paper bag, oil, popcorn. Yes, that's the song. That is how Tom got me into emo. But do you know how he got me into anime? Fruits Basket. The only anime I liked before that is Ogenki Clinic. If you are under the age of 18, do not look that up. That is for grown-ups. It was an anime that we sold in the back room at the video store. And we rented it at the back room too. And I really like Ogenki Clinic. It is essentially the animated Japanese animation version of Deep Throat. And then, the continuing adventures of that clinic.
I mean, it's ridiculous. It is silly. It is funny.
It is absolutely ridiculous, but it's also very much for grown-ups. And but that was literally the only anime. I tried watching lots of others, and I did not care for any of them.
But if you're a certain kind of demi-romantic, neurodivergent person, and you especially, for whatever reason, if you're female, have you ever watched Fruits Basket? Like, seriously, I do not know of, if you are neurodivergent and identify as female, have you watched Fruits Basket? Because you don't know yet, but you love this.
Yeah. And I really didn't think I was going to enjoy Fruits Basket because, again, it's about teenagers. And let's be perfectly honest, teenagers are annoying. There's a reason I did not go through a program to teach high schoolers. I went through the program at my college, my university, to teach K-8. Because I specifically did not want to have to interact with teenagers. I cannot stand them. And I say that as somebody who was a youth director at not one, but two different churches the same year. That truly taught me I'm very competent at it and I don't like it. Again, I don't want to ever camp with teenagers again. I don't want to take teenagers on road trips ever again in my entire life. I never want to host another party filled with teenagers ever again. I do not
If
care
you
for
are an
teenagers.
adult,
They're so
past
annoying.
college, and you are hanging out with teenagers,
I am suspicious of you. And I include all high school teachers in that, by the way. If somebody's like, look, I'm a high school teacher because it was like the best paying job in my area and I do it, and, you know, if there was a better job, I would take it, then it's like, okay, fine. But if you're like, no, I love being around teenagers and the youth of tomorrow, then it's like, I am watching you. And I am definitely trying to like find out all the dirt on you because I'm suspicious of you. Teenagers are super annoying. Why do you like them so much? What are you up to?
they're all broken inside.
Hormones does amazing things to the brain. And one of the things adolescent hormones does is it makes all teenagers facial expression blind for a solid 5 to 10 years of their life. This is no exaggeration. They really are blind to what facial expressions mean. They have put teenager brains in the scanners and found everything's malfunctioning and that they are wrong 75% of the time about what any given facial expression means. It is a very weird thing. Why? Why would human genetics do this to us? But again, it's only one drop in the bucket of why teenagers are annoying. Like, there's nothing wrong with being annoying, by the way. I was annoying as a teenager. Tom was super annoying as a teenager. I was there for that. And he was there for mine. We were both super annoying. Our sister was super annoying. And she was a late bloomer, too. We thought she was going to be the only perfect one in our family. And then it hit her late. She didn't start getting annoying until she was 16. And then she made up for lost time. Ugh. And every other teenager, super annoying. And there's nothing wrong with being super annoying. It's just a time period you just have to get through. But I'm suspicious of any fully grown adult who's like, I like to be among the company of adolescents. Like, what is wrong with y'all?
I believe as,
If you're a youth pastor that loves to couch...
I'm guessing touch.
Oh, that's worse. Yeah. You like to hang out with teenagers? Yeah, I'm highly suspicious. Exactly. There's something inherently wrong with you that, I don't even know if therapy could fix. Maggie says, haven't seen Fruits Basket, but it looks like something that my girls started watching then stopped. So, okay, there's two different animes of Fruits Basket. And the first one, I think from 2001, was never finished. Super annoying. However, they just redid it from the start in 2019. It is, I believe, available on Hulu, dubbed. And they have all 3 seasons, and they actually do the entire story arc. Oh, it's so good. So many tears. It's not that it just makes you cry. It's just that those moments are so tender and earnest that, like, it's so good, Maggie. It's so good. Okay, so one of the things that I actually like about Fruits Basket, though, in this grouping, is it's another way to show multi-characters growing together to be less toxic and more functional. Oh, dear. Okay, I'm moving on. So, at the heart of this multi-tier system of dysfunctional people is Toru. Toru is not from this family, this incredibly dysfunctional, messed up family. Toru is from her own mildly dysfunctional family, and that's totally fine. But what we see is that Toru has a couple qualities of her personality that are inherent to her personality that these characters need and that help them feel safe enough to blossom and, really explore their own personal growth. And what that does is it then helps these family members have the necessary, honest conversations with each other. Tom?
Yeah.
You normally interrupt me by this point. It's weird. So
I figure, look, it's Fruits Basket. There's a lot more to describe. Keep going.
I'm trying to remember the things I said yesterday that like why I liked it so much. But and by the way, I'm terrible with names. Don't at me. I don't care. I just remember most of this family for their zodiac. So I love that like at the core of it is just constant arguing between the cat and the rat.
But also, you idolize and wish to take over the life of the snake. That is one of Glory's, dreams of becoming.
I mean, y'all, do you not know how extra I really am? I'm extra. I'm extra upon extra. With a cherry on top of that. Shocker. Yes, I would love to have my own little costume shop with my own little seamstress to help me design and sew outfits and make all these little ruffly outfits for people. Yes, of course I would love to. So, but we see that Toru, when she comes in contact with each member of the zodiac inside this family, that she makes them feel safe enough to really do some introspection and to be honest about what they need to be honest about. Change, though, really happens both in each individual life, but in the bigger life of Akito, when the older members of the Zodiac are brutally honest with Akito. Well, maybe not brutal, but they are frank and honest with her about the things that need to be said, which is you toxic as hell, and you need to just recognize that your mom's toxicity is your mom's toxicity and it's not inherent to you, and get over it, and also get over yourself. And also, we'll love you forever, but seriously, you have got to deal with your shit, girl.
I think we're seeing in the chat why the Spences are together. And that sort of reminds me of Jessica and Claude, as we were talking.
Spence, I'd put you in so many ruffles, you don't even know. I'd put you in so many petticoats. I would put you in so many dang petticoats that Noah would just be like, let me play with the ruffles. You know it. And that is how each of the characters become less toxic, is through their contact with Toru, and then they are able to release some of this toxicity that's been holding them back, and then say the things they need to say to Akito. So it's actually a multi-tiered system by which these characters become less toxic and more awesome and adorable. Still disappointed that the dragon turns into a seahorse rather than a dragon. Especially now that we know there are something that looks kind of like dragons in Indonesia. They do not smoke. But, like, that would have been cooler, but okay. I mean, every author is entitled to their own little things. Also, wouldn't it have been great if he could then have carried their babies? I mean, that's what seahorses do, so. Wouldn't that have been cool? Like, then he could have been a true trans. Anyway, this would have just been so dang cool. expense is confiscated. It's fine.
Although we have found a source for relatively low-cost petticoats.
Yes, so Spence,
crinolines.
Crinoline petticoats that fit me, so pretty confident they'll fit you too, sugar. And they're comfy, by the way.
Yeah.
They're actually quite comfy to wear. Which
was the real those links.
So,
having described all that,
yes, what do I need to talk about? Because I just talked about what I love about Fruits Basket.
But so unlike a lot of the other stories where we have more of a direct honing against each other.
Yes.
In Fruits Basket, it is sort of the opposite as you can get, where we have Toru, who is truly at one end of the family, figuratively, and versus is Akito, right? Is the leader?
Yes, Akito is the god.
Who is the cause of all the toxicity. And really, it's actually
Akito's she's actually mother. Not the cause of all of it. Like, the bunny's mother is like practically what's her name from Harry Potter.
Yeah. Umbridge.
Yes, I was like, it's Doris. I don't remember.
Dolores.
But like Umbridge. Practically like mood.
But I mean, but we have it essentially. We have the top down is creating the toxic environment, and here's Toru all the way at the bottom because she's not even actually part of this family, changing and bringing the healthy positivity and healing and compassion in, and watching as she essentially slowly bulldozes over all the toxic traits as she works her way up the family.
It truly is a wire mommy versus terry cloth mommy kind of vibe. Of all these people had the wire mommy. So, okay. So if you didn't get a psychology degree like moi, then you may not have had drilled into your brain by the psychology department this terrible, awful, informative study done a very, very long time ago about, they say it was done with monkeys, and it was done with monkeys, but before it was done with monkeys, it was done with orphan children. But anyway, that's a whole nother matter. But essentially, there's, for the monkey version, which is the only one you can find now, because, anyway, I'm going to get into that later.
Because crimes against humanity.
Yes. There's a mother figure that was made out of like chicken wire, and a warm formula bottle is inserted into it so that the baby monkey has their choice of either, if they're hungry, right? A baby wants to feed, right? There's the warm bottle, or the other option is a terry cloth doll. It also in the shape of a monkey mommy that has an internal warming device. So it's warm and it's comforting, but no food. What do you think all the monkey babies did? The food for survival or the warmth for comfort? Spoiler, it was all tragedies. So when I say the terry cloth mommy or the wire mommy, that's what, whenever I'm referencing it, that's what I'm talking about. So here it is. Both monkey babies and human babies need both. They need both food. They need, milk. And they also need warm comfort in order for their brains to grow right, as well as their bodies to grow right. They need food for their bodies, but they need warmth and comfort and to feel safe and loved and held for, their spirit, but as well as their actual brain neurology. And so, but what we're really seeing in the Fruits Basket story is Toru is offering that warm comfort that all of them have been deprived of. They've only been given the wire mommy of just, here's your food to sustain the body, but not the comfort you need to feel safe and to grow as a person. And Toru is finally shows up into this whole family's life and is offering that genuine compassion and love and patience And yes, children act out. Well, guess what? So do adults act out who've had arrested development. They still act like little kids, which means they have temper tantrums. They have emotional outbursts. They can even be mildly violent, just like toddlers. And, it's terrible. It's unfortunate. It is a sign of a kind of abuse. But thankfully, most adults, when they're able to actually deal with that trauma of not feeling nurtured and safe at such a young formative age, they're then able to work through it and grow. And that is exactly what we see in Fruits Basket, in this wonderful family drama that will totally make you cry if you have half a soul.
You will.
Tom, we can show them the links to the petticoat after the show. I will even put on the petticoats in the Discord server, and you can see me prance around in my pajamas with the petticoats over it. Okay?
Look, I figured you had a bit more. I mean, like, you have had quite a bit of talk about Fruits Basket, so I figured I have some time.
I'm done.
I mean, you love this. You have watched it. You've rewatched it. Also, I wonder if Maggie's kids were watching the new one, if they just haven't, caught up to the last season, because I think the dub only came out recently.
Yeah. The dub came out this summer.
And, they've been a year or two apart each, so.
It takes time.
And yeah, it
Do you
is
have
so
anything
nice.
to add, Tom?
Not really, because, I mean, it is definitely something that it does help to experience it. Like, it is one of those ones that definitely recommend to watch it, because it is such good storytelling. Like, it is really some of the best storytelling in this type of story. Of how do you get an extended family that seems to all be broken to believably heal as a group. It's not an easy type of story to tell, but they do it so well.
Yeah, it really reads like a family epic. Only instead of it being over generations, it's just done in the course of like 3 years in world, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Like, there are references made to things that happened 10 years prior, but that's about it. I guess Akito's like, what, she's in her mid-20s at that point, and the oldest Zodiac members, I think, are in their earlier mid-30s. Because there's 2 of the guys are older than Akito, I think. Yes.
Yeah.
Because that is a reference is made to that near the end of the 3rd season, at the end of the story, about how when she was in gestation, they could start hearing her talk to them. All the I think the 2 or 3 members of the Zodiac who were alive at the time as little children could hear her talk to them while she was in the womb. And they were very much waiting for her arrival. That was very exciting for them. And all they did was they wanted to love her. They were just like, we're going to love you. It's going to be wonderful. We'll all be united. And then more members will be born and it will be wonderful. And then it wasn't, because her mom. And it is true. Like, you can really wreck a person if you are the primary caregiver and you are yourself very toxic. You can put all that toxicity into a little child.
The other reason authors may want to actually watch this story, and especially like really the full story, is the other type of story that this mimics or can be used as is a corporate story. This shows how toxic corporate behaviors are created, and they are created from the top down. And this shows how a corporation is corrupted, and they also shows a potential way to heal the corporation if you want in the story, or just to show what happened and why it fell, and no one should feel guilty. of, depending on what you need for that story. But because this extended family is very much a corporate type group of, only half the people are related to each other. The other half are not because they married in. But they all have responsibilities to each other. They all have different places in this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's like, it is also a corporate story if you want to see how corporations become toxic and also how they can become better again, even when they seem to be on their last legs. I mean, really, Toru comes in and this family's just, a few years from entire self-destruction.
Yeah, they are not that far away from full implosion. Which, you really do get a sense of the tragedy about to happen. Since I think at least one of the members has already tried to unalive themselves. Either right as Toru shows up or right after. Like, it's that bad.
Yeah.
And the family is so, like, destructive and dysfunctional. And that member who tries to unalive themselves and does not succeed is not the only member who has contemplated this, and that Toru finds that out in the process. So, trigger warnings for people. Be aware that this is truly about real family issues, and like how so much widespread mental illness in one family, how it can appear in a variety of ways. So, however, I will say it's very much obvious that it's, at least to some degree, geared toward children, and I say children, I really mean adolescents, because it doesn't contain what I would call true tragedies. It contains flirting with tragedy, but not like really.
And the abuse.
I mean, granted, Toru is an orphan when the story starts, so obviously her life does contain tragedy.
But like the abuse we see is neglect. It's not as much direct violence type.
Mm-hmm.
Although it still shows the traumatizing effects of neglect.
Mm-hmm.
We have, it's going to put you through the emotional ringer.
Oh, yes. It is truly very honest about how dysfunction can appear in a family. And what are the logical conclusions to that, both in the negative, but also ways that it can be salvaged and can be saved. And the answer is, I got to be honest, a lot of the times what people really need is compassion. Compassion and safety and just feeling support, like just somebody just wants good things for you. But in order to feel that, you have to open yourself up to it. You can't feel what you're not willing to feel. So even if somebody's on the outside fully supporting you and cheering you on, if you're not willing to open yourself up to that vulnerability in order to feel it, you will not feel it. Like when people talk about, I don't feel loved, it's like, how can you not feel my love? I am over here loving you constantly and wish no ill for you at all. How do you not feel it? And the answer is, you have to open yourself up in order to feel it. Like that is the catch-22 of human beings.
And that is sort of what we see in Encanto.
Mm-hmm.
Is where they have all been traumatized to the point that they have started closing themselves off.
Mm-hmm.
As well.
They all very much feel isolated in their own personal hells. And my goodness, this family in Encanto is so good at making their own personal hells. Have you noticed? Like these people, that's their real family skill, is constructing their own tiny little personal hells. Even Bruno.
Bruno's soap operas.
I mean, they've all made their own personal hells. I mean, even Louisa with the donkeys every day. she feels weak, she's still having to tote donkeys around all day, every day. 6 of them.
They just want to play. But I mean, not Fairly Odd talking about nobody got anywhere till Akito opened up. It's very much that corporate culture of until the top stops being toxic, it's hard to get anyone else. And you see that again in Encanto. Until the Abuela stops being so toxic, it's hard for anyone else to stop also being toxic.
Mm-hmm.
But once you can get the person at the top, everyone else feels suddenly free to be more of themselves and open up. But it's because they can suddenly feel a bit safer. People in unsafe environments do not let themselves be vulnerable.
I noticed it's similar in our family. As long as mom and dad were very much alive and in charge, our family environment was very toxic. No matter how much I tried to address that toxicity, particularly in my relationships with my siblings, who said they wanted to have less toxic relationships, but they always kind of held back for me. And it was only once we lost contact with dad because apparently he had wandered into the Tucson desert and never came back. It was only after losing contact with dad and then mom essentially stepping down as our family matriarch and me becoming the de facto matriarch of our family that I started seeing a willingness of my siblings to change their operating system as far as their relationship with me and their relationship with each other to some degree.
And I know
It had to do with leadership. Maggie says, like Vincent Valentine, so much trauma that he can't express himself to the point Cloud thinks he doesn't care. But he cares too much and apologizes to Cloud for the misconception. Who was Vincent Valentine?
Final Fantasy VII.
Oh, something I have no idea. But look at his dad.
You know the name of Vincent's dad.
I have never.
Again, where people could only express so much, and at a certain point, it also becomes inexpressible for people. Like when people say that they can't cry, it's either they have not reached enough emotional distress to cry, or they've already got so much that this is not going to change their level because they're already in so much distress.
Well, for me, there's many times where I could not cry because I did not feel safe enough to cry, even though I wanted to cry.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you have to root out the rot, which is at the top. Who's the leader? If there's rot in the family, it's rot just like in the company. It comes from the top down. What is it they say? The fish rots from the head.
From the head. Yeah. Of someone who is rotten at the very bottom is not going to change any bit of culture or attitudes.
Mm-hmm.
They can only affect those immediately beside them. But the one at the top sets the tone and says what's safe and what's not safe.
Mm-hmm. In the Joy Club, the mothers, oh yeah. Because they're the ones who are allowing or not allowing their daughters to grow and change. And to some degree, I think that's what they mean by, the sins of the father are visited upon the children. You see it play out in the next generation or in the next level.
Yeah. And it's hard to change without outside assistance.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to recognize the toxicity you've picked up from, those you think are kind of, your life guides, the ones who've already come before and gotten you to this point. And we think, hey, they couldn't possibly have anything but the best intentions for me, so I should do what they're saying because they have the right idea. They got here. And that's why it often takes an outsider perspective for them to see the no, the dysfunction's already inside. And you got a lot of things to change. Let's see what else we got. Thor, Love and Thunder.
Yeah.
Last one standing.
Yep.
When your ex is better at being a hero than you.
Maggie says, in breaking the cycle of trauma and damage, it's so much work because it must first be seen, recognized for what they are, and then help sought before the work can even begin to change it. It's true. For a more lighthearted dysfunctional buddy, Moody, Hobbs and Shaw.
I mean, who doesn't enjoy seeing, what's his face? Driver, the British guy. You like him from Crank, High Voltage.
Statham?
Yeah. Statham. Who doesn't love seeing him get beaten up?
Feels good.
He's got a face for punching.
I haven't seen Hobbs and Shaw, though. Or at least I don't remember it. Yes.
No, you haven't.
Jason's
we have it, though, if you want to. Because I got curious.
Get me in a desperate mood one day. Anyway, so Thor, Love and Thunder. What is to say?
And it hasn't already been said.
And he's like, I like it more than Fast and Furious movies. Do you like the bar is so low? It's subterranean. Anyway, okay, so there.
To me, the Thor, Love and Thunder is definitely about when you've written your hero character into a toxic role, how do you really recover them? Because Thor had definitely been written into being toxic by that point. Yeah, they tried to recover him a little bit for the Avengers Endgame stuff, but he was still pretty toxic. He still was driving Star-Lord nuts by his mere presence.
My favorite part in Love and Thunder, well, one of my favorite parts, I have many, but one of them is where Thor gives Peter Quill his own ship back. So toxic. What
Hey, to Mama.
for me? Hello to Mama. For me, what works is we see Thor limping along through the entire story, not doing a good job. He is barely functional, and he does not succeed at any of his minor goals to achieve his big goal, stop the God Butcher. And then we see he does fail. He literally fails at stopping this guy. Okay. And he loses the person he was holding out hope that he could get back together with. So, and we see essentially really in the postscript to this story, the way he succeeds, the way he stops being so toxic is to really just stop being who he was and take on a new role, the role of caregiver to this little girl who definitely has some serious superpowers. If she can destroy frying pans with her eyes. Lasers, people. So, and I am reminded of one of my favorite Doctor Who episodes, Turn Left. Who remembers Donna? I love the Turn Left episode where they show if Donna had not, essentially, if the Runaway Bride episode had not happened, the Doctor would have died. And how terrible the world would have been without the Doctor. Like, literally, how terrible it would have been on Earth without the Doctor to stop all the disasters. And that it is breaking apart the universe. And because the Doctor is not there to stop these disasters, bigger disasters are happening. Like, enormous universe cracking disasters are happening. And that they need the Doctor. And the only way to do it is, of course, time travel is the answer. But that Donna has to make the ultimate sacrifice. Donna cannot be Donna as she knows herself in this dysfunctional, cracked universe. She has to die. And that is sort of what happens to Thor. In order for a more functional version of Thor to live, dysfunctional Thor has to never leave Eternia, or Eternity again. Should have been called Eternia. I know the good name was taken by He-Man. I still think it's a fantastic name. Eternia is such a better, cool, beautiful name than all the other stuff. But Thor, the dysfunctional Thor, did not leave holding Jane Foster as she breathed her last breath. That dysfunctional Thor died with her. And the functional Thor embraced life and took over the care of this little girl who did absolutely nothing wrong in the world, but is now all by herself in the world. And Thor becomes her main caregiver, and she is a handful, just like I'm sure little Thor was. Possibly more of a handful. And that is where the functionality comes in. That is where Thor becomes functional. We really see it in that last scene where he's no longer, it's, my way or the highway, and you have to extensively argue with him. He's like, fine, wear your bad little, house shoes into this battle. Your feet are going to hurt, and I'm not going to feel sorry for you. And she's like, fine, I'll wear the boots. What is this food? It is flapcakes. I don't like those. I don't think I like. You do. Eat them. No. He's like, fine, starve. In order to be a good parent, you have to just sort of roll with the day. No day will ever go the way you planned as long as you are parenting. I'm going to tell you that now. If you don't know, if you are of an age that you don't yet know this about children, they are little tornadoes of chaos. And you're just riding a tornado of chaos every day. And eventually they grow, hopefully, into a functional adult. If you did your job right, which is you sort of like were a bumper of your tornado. You were the bumper car of your tornado, protecting your little tornado person from actually getting into dangerous spots and dangerous places and places that would scar them for life in a bad way versus, a little skin scar. Then they'll grow into a functional little human being, or a big human being, really. That is your job as a parent, is to just ride the chaos out. Or a pet parent. I mean, if your pet is big enough, they could do the adulting, but they remain mommy's little entity of chaos. I mean, there's a certain truth there.
I mean, that is how our mother viewed us. She may have at one point in time said, I am no longer protecting them from y'all. Go forth.
Yes.
Whatever happens, they brought it on themselves.
Yep. That is what she said. It was not actually on her deathbed, but it was close. It was a couple months out of her deathbed.
It's like, I'm no longer holding y'all back. Go forth.
Go forth and be yourselves. And that is why I think sometimes people talk about like what a good thing parenting can be for a person, an adult person. Is you learn that like what you want is immaterial. Life is chaos. You're just riding the wave every day. I'm going to tell you now. There's only been, I think, 3 days in my entire life that has played out exactly the way I thought it would at the start of the day. All the other days in 40 plus years have just been, well, that didn't go the way I thought, huh? And it could be for more positive or more negative or just more chaos. But it always is something I did not expect. I did not see this coming today. And I'm decent at predicting things. And it's still like, life is just chaos, y'all.
Should I mention our mother's quote about you? You know, before she had any children, our parents were so sure that they were smart enough to get a child to be whatever they wanted it to be. They were sure of it, no problem. They were so prepared. And then they had you, their first. And they loved you dearly, but no, they were not prepared in any way.
Go on and say it. Say the family quote.
And to quote our mother about you, of, you know, because she was told every child is a blank slate to be written upon.
Yeah, the tabula rasa.
Was tabula rasa my ass. Of just, no.
Yeah, and then she'd usually say, you came out of the womb with opinions, which is...
Yes.
Yes, I did.
Dad's remark was that you were the first child right after you were born. You were the first baby he'd ever held that required the holder conform to the baby. If you were not going to change your position, he had to rearrange his arms and how he's holding until he can get you to fit right.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, you knew how you wanted to be held, and no one's going to hold you any different than that.
It's actually a sign of a neurodivergent child. Anyway, but that was before they knew that.
Yes, hubris.
Yes, our parents were very hubristic.
Had a lot of hubris.
It's true. Hello.
But yeah, children are one way of teaching, you know, people that they have a lot of hubris they need to let go of. As we get older, we have a lot of hubris. We think, oh, we're adults now. We've learned, we know how the world runs. And the answer is always, no, you don't. You can't control the world. You definitely can't control a child.
No one can. They can't control themselves, so you definitely can't control them. Oh, dear. Not enough spoons? Oh, that was me yesterday.
Do you have any hot cocoa you can put in the microwave?
Ooh, that would probably help.
The other one is Earl Grey tea if you've got it, but I'm betting hot chocolate, or at least hot cocoa would really help.
Delicious and filled with antioxidants.
But yeah, like that's what Thor: Love and Thunder in the end shows, is you have to let go of your hubris.
Mm-hmm.
No matter where it has brought you, you can always just drop it.
And even positive functional characters can have hubris and just be unaware of it. I'm always learning new things about myself and where my hubris is and where I need to just sort of go with the flow. I have no idea what I'm doing. And I think that, you know, like, well, I'll just kind of like roll with it. And then I still find out, my theory was wrong. And it's like, even positive functional characters find out from time to time where their misconceptions are. Even about things that, you know, they're very knowledgeable about. They'll still find things that they have misconceptions about. And some of those misconceptions are harmless, And some of those misconceptions are hurting them. Do you know how many times I have an upset stomach and I think, is this cancer? Glory, it hasn't been yet. Calm down. And yet, still.
Does a day go by? I mean, I can't say anything. I don't mention to you which ones I've got, but I mean, I've definitely got a few of the, is this old age, coming for me? Is this the one? Is this the, no, it's not that.
So, I mean, like, you can also use characters and have them care for something young and vulnerable, even like a pet or a child or something, to shine a light on where they have some serious misconceptions that maybe are harming them or harming the cute, adorable little fluffy thing. Oh, yeah, cancer is easy. It's the chemo that sucks, truly. So, I mean, again, it's a character, so you're not harming actual children. Please don't do this in real life. Do not be like, I need to grow as a person. Or, you know who needs to grow? My spouse. Let's get them a baby. No, please don't. That is not, let's not experiment on real children. Not even puppies or kittens. But in fiction, oh yeah, totally play it out. Totally.
Yeah, I think that's about.
I think that wraps us up. Yeah. Do you have final thoughts about this? Does anyone in the chat have final thoughts?
There's always a way to have fun with toxic characters if there's more than one.
Also, if you are making a character toxic, why not make them toxic in a way that someone you really know irritates the hell out of you? And then you, as the writer, can spend your time tormenting them a bit and taunting them the way you wish you could in real life. Let it be therapeutic for you, the writer. It's good time, and it's not technically hurting anybody. So have a good time. You don't even have to get to the plot till later. You could just torment a character. It's good times, y'all. It's good times. Maggie says the lesson in all these is realize that everyone is damaged and has to make the choice to hold on to or overcome the trauma. I liked in Doctor Who, there's a reference to terrible things happen to you, and it's your choice whether you let it make your heart hard or softer. It's a choice you make. It's a choice I make every time somebody breaks my heart is, am I going to let this soften my heart or harden it? Maggie says, and it is fun to write two toxic characters going through the same arc, but only one overcomes and the other succumbs. Ooh, very nice. Good times.
I mean, that's how you have sequel potential.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And as it also, although that also gets to something I do eventually tell most friends, / eventually they kind of figured out of, oh, I am a very, very judgmental person. Like I'm very judgmental. But I only judge people on their choices. I don't judge them on the stuff most people think I'm going to judge them about.
Yeah, Tom.
Circumstances are not.
I can honestly say Tom has never really judged me on what parts of me jiggle. He's never judged me on the things I feel self-conscious of or other people have made fun of me about. My big old arms. Tom has never judged me on that, but he will definitely judge me on the stuff that comes out of my mouth. He will absolutely judge me on the offhanded things I said, and then later he'll be like, I remember you saying this. And I'm like, how dare you? How dare you quote me back to me? I mean, it's deserved, and I'm here for the roasting. But it is as it is. Let's see.
But yeah,
as Carly Simon saying, don't mind if I fall apart. There's more room in a broken heart. Exactly. You know what? You break my heart, but guess what? Scar tissue comes back even stronger than the original tissue. And that is the truth. And so that is the decision I make again and again, to let it make me softer. Let it make me resilient.
And here, for everyone, feel free to use this. I don't think it's used at all and really should be. of your character can always have a trait of drinking and enjoying oranges a lot. And if anyone asks why did they like oranges, and it's I just love vitamin C. I'm just scarred from everything that broke me. And you know how scar tissue is thirsty for vitamin C. That's what scurvy does.
How far did we have to walk to get to this punchline? Through the primrose path.
Yes.
I love you so much. It's practically a journey. I guess my final thought is just simply add more characters, add more strife, and allow your characters to have real conversations with each other, heartfelt conversations. Even toxic characters will have heart-to-hearts. You'd be surprised. I know this from hanging out with a lot of lowlifes in my life. I am definitely very familiar with the underground market, so to speak, in South Mississippi. I have hung out with murderers and thieves and plenty of prostitutes and drug dealers, all sorts of ne'er-do-wells. And I am here to tell you, it's surprisingly easy to have heart-to-heart conversations with people in the middle of the night behind a truck stop by a dumpster where a body may or may not be at the bottom. And then having a conversation about what does human decomp smell like compared to what does beef decomp smell like. You would be surprised how people will open themselves up, because in the end, if you're writing about humans in particular, humans crave to be known. They crave to be known by other humans. It must be something in the way we're wired. So you can take advantage of that as a writer to have characters have a moment where they think, I'll never see this person again, so I'll just tell them the truth of what I really think or what I've really experienced. And wahaha, little do they know the writer has plans for these two characters to run into each other later. So feel free. Don't worry about, I need this character to seem closed off. Don't worry, they seem closed off most of the time. But they'll have heart-to-hearts, particularly over cigarettes or drinks or over a meal. People feel vulnerable in those moments, and you think that they'd want to feel closed off. And instead, they're like, well, while I feel vulnerable, I might as well say something vulnerable. It's just how humans are.
And don't worry about the seeming impossibility of them running into each other again based on whatever situation they are. The fact they ran into each other once shows they have some similarity in their life directions.
Yeah, I mean, statistically speaking, if you run into a person once, you are actually more likely to run into them again. That is a known fact of humans, because it means like you have a tendency to frequent the same shops and to also have the same kind of pattern of how you visit shops, how you walk around, what your routes are when you go do things, when you grocery shop, all those things.
What parts of the world you visit.
Mm-hmm. So running into people is actually not as unusual as you might think it is, or how people would like, oh, it's New York City, a town of 12 million people. I'll never see my ex again. Like, no, they your ex because y'all had other things in common. You're going to run into them again. There's a reason why there are literal towns in South Mississippi I do not go to, so I will not run into my exes again. And if I have to go to those towns, I go with a chaperone, because someone has to save me from running into my exes.
Which you do a lot.
It happens a lot, y'all. So, next week will be the final episode of this season of Creative Recharge. And we are going to talk about the female eunuch. What is the female eunuch, you may ask? Maybe you have not heard of this. Somehow you have made it through your life not hearing about this terrible thing that humans do, where they say a character is female and then give them no feminine characteristics. What? Does that mean they're non-binary? No, it doesn't. Does that mean they're gender fluid? No, it does not. Does that mean that maybe they're trans and that maybe they're not really female? No, it does not. It means they're a female eunuch. They have been stripped of all that makes them the gender performance of femininity without actually admitting they have been stripped. So they're essentially female in name only, and they are used as a male character that they put a dress on. Not like literally, but figuratively speaking. It's a way to like say, oh, see, I have female characters, and their characters are in no way actually female. So they're like, look, I have female characters. I'm a diverse writer, and then they're not. It's a lie. So we're going to talk about it, and we're going to talk about movies that are prime examples of, well, what does a female unit character look like in stories? How can I identify and make sure that I do not commit this crime?
Yes, don't be Joss Whedon.
Don't be John Lasseter.
By the way, we've had the poll going so long, there is no lead. It equaled out.
Even split. Oh dear. Yes, it's a male character with boobies. It's a male character that they say is female, who is not female, who does not act female, and has no female problems. It happens a lot with female hero side character tropes. It does. It is gross, and it rings false for a lot of people, and it can actually be harmful to readers and to audiences. If it were not harmful, I would not give a shit. But it is harmful to children. It is harmful to adults. It's very similar. It's somewhat similar to saying this character is a person of color, is a minority, and they don't ever talk about, how the struggles of being a minority character. They are white, but with like a tan. It is destructive. It's hurtful to the audience, and it's misleading to other members of the audience who themselves are not, say, for instance, a character, I'm not a character, but a person of color, and they're thinking, oh, well, that's just what it's like to be African American or Indigenous or Asian American or whatever. And no, it is not. That is not what it's like. It is not you're white but with a tan. That is not what it is like to be a minority. So again, it is destructive. So is the female unit character. It is destructive. And it is misleading to male audience members because they think, oh, women don't have any problems different from me. No. And one of the problems is oppression, but that is the least of the problems. How about all the effects of oppression has, including on having substandard medical care? Because your doctors never believe you about pain or hormonal issues or anything. Oh, it must be in your head because you're a woman and you can't be trusted to like actually tell us what your symptoms are. And so on. Let alone, there is no alley on the planet you can walk down safe or at least feel safe. That you always have to think about your physical safety, and so on. The list goes on. So we're going to talk about female unit characters, how to recognize them, how to avoid writing them, and, all that good stuff, because it's not talked about enough, because if you have never heard of it, guess what? Most other people haven't either. So we're gonna go. It also puts younger females in danger in the real life because this trope leads to girls thinking they can kick a large guy's butt without any training, and they get hurt after attacking a man who doesn't hold back. Yes, like, oh, he'll be fine. If my man ever tries to hurt me, I can defend myself. Oh, honey.
Yeah, oddly, the best scene I've ever seen in a movie describing the unequal difference in strengths between characters was not a female one, but was one I liked as a kid called, what was it, Three Ninjas, I think?
Mm-hmm.
The three siblings. And I can't remember if it's the first one or the second one, but they go over, essentially, at some point, these three kids have to fight a literal sumo wrestler guy. And they're left with, you don't have the body mass to do anything to this guy. What do you do?
Right.
And so they have to go over, here's the other strategies you have to use on someone who is just that much bigger.
Exactly.
You can't just go a mano with someone if your strengths are that different.
Same with women. Women's center of gravity is different.
Yes.
It's very different. Men hold their center of gravity in a different place, and it makes even pivoting another person a very different experience when it's not two women, fighting each other or two men fighting each other. So again, there's a lot more to this than a lot of people understand. So we're going to go over all of it so that you can avoid the dreaded female unit character.
Of what it looks like, and then what it doesn't look like when it's actually female.
Yeah, because like what womanhood is diverse, okay? Straight up. It is diverse. And what one woman's woman troubles are is different from another woman's woman troubles. All women's troubles are valid. But there are some characters of like there is nothing any kind of feminine about her. And yet she keeps claiming to be female. And I'm like, are you though? That, we're going to go over that. So it's going to be a great episode. We will be talking about Moana. We'll also be talking about, what was it, Toy Story 2?
Yes. And I've now realized, come on, let's bring it in. Firefly.
Yes, Firefly.
Because Mal's second in command
yes.
is a female. Even if she is married and obviously loves her husband.
But her character could be a man married to a man, and there would be no difference in any of the dialogue or anything.
The same for what's her name? Who's actually a dancer? I can't remember that actress's name. Who's also in Firefly? Plays the doctor's little sister. Again, that character could also just as easily be male. It wouldn't change a single thing about this character.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Shad Diversity did a video on how female and male warriors match up, and it comes down to skill.
There's another one by, I think, Jill Beanup, who's I forget what you call it, someone who uses rapiers.
Yeah.
And she had two of her friends do it who had big height differences to show the very different fighting styles you have just depending on physicality.
Mm-hmm. Like how a short woman is going to fight differently than a tall woman. And that's still going to be different from how a short man fights versus a tall man.
Mm-hmm.
As writers, we really do need to familiarize ourselves with the difference. It's not just women are men with boobies. They are not. So, be aware. Yes, Laura Croft. We're both clicking things. Yes, absolutely. So that's what we're going to talk about next week. You're all going to have a wonderful time. I hope you'll definitely come and rewatch us anytime you want. And if you are still watching this on the replay, thank you. Let us know if you'd like to. If you'd like to let us know in the comments that you rewatched it or you watched it on the replay, and we hope you enjoyed it. If you have comments, if you have feedback or notes, please let us know. We would absolutely love to hear from you. Also, after the show, every Monday, we go to my Discord server and hang out in the Clubhouse voice chat for the rest of the evening. If you are not already a member and you would like to join the Discord server, there is an invite link down below in the description under my name. We'd love to see you hang out. So thank you all so much. We're going to go to the Discord. Bye-bye, everybody.